Welcome to the Coaching Crowd podcast with me, Zoe Hawkins, and my friend and co-host, Jo Wheatley.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's podcast, which is all about the role of coaching in mental health. And the reason that we're focusing on this today is it's a huge part of mine and Zoe's mission as coaches and coach trainers, which is to support everyday mental health in a proactive way.
Absolutely. And I think a great place to start with this discussion is just recognizing that mental health exists on a continuum. I think when people talk about mental health, it can often be interpreted as people in a place of struggle and in a place of difficulty with their mental health not being in a good place. But of course, you travel along that continuum. There is positive mental health, being in a place where you're clear on what you want, you're clear on what your needs are, you're happy, you're content, you're joyful. And as coaches, we work with clients along that continuum. And often we have to make choices around where is it appropriate to help a client, wherever they may be on that particular continuum. And those choices often come into play towards the other end of the continuum where people are in a place of struggle. But coaching has a real role to play along that whole continuum, and it will show up in lots of different ways. So what would you build on, Jo?
I think that we must, as coaches, always operate in our zone of competence. So that's the number one. It's always that ethical place. I think where this shows up on a day-to-day basis is a client will come to a coaching conversation and they might be feeling exhausted, they might be feeling angry, or just have a potent mix of emotions that they feel uncomfortable with. And they transition in the session through those emotions, they process them, and they get to a point of either reframing how they're feeling, feeling a different way, getting re-energized, having the confidence about what they're going to do moving forwards, and they come out of it feeling lighter. So there's an immediate impact in some of these, in coaching conversations. And sometimes that's through that sense of belonging and acceptance through the relationship that they have with their coach, and that quieter space to do the reflection. And sometimes it's about them realizing, wow, I've actually got the resources I need to respond to this situation that I'm in, or I can find them, and they have hope. And so when I think about, it's great how we have lots of organizations investing in mental health first aid training. It's raising awareness and normalizing the fact that we all have mental health. And as you say, we can transition from hour to hour or day to day in it. My personal view is that it's not enough. And I trained as a mental health first aider and in an internal role, and I would come into the workplace and I wouldn't get to my desk. I'd have so many people wanting to come and speak to me or say, Jo, can you speak to somebody in my team? But when I did the training, whilst you learn about different things to do with mental health, you don't actually, I believe, learn how to hold and create that safe space with another individual. And that's what we learn through our coaching training. So that, from my perspective, there's a lot more work to be done. And also, how do we support mental health first aiders, for example, in the workplace? A lot of them aren't necessarily provided with supervision, which is helping them to support their mental health so that they are resourced to help others.
There is so much that goes into training as a coach. If you're a regular listener, you're starting to become aware of through this podcast. But when somebody comes to you, to share something or seeking support, that piece around being able to create a safe space, as you said, Jo, is so absolutely critical. And we aren't really taught how to listen. And, we've done episodes on listening before, but listening in a very non-judgmental way, listening in a place where you can leave your assumptions behind, not needing to rescue whoever might be with you, sharing whatever they may be sharing at that particular point in time. And the skills that you gain through coaching training, I believe, help you to support people with their mental health in an everyday way, because not only do you learn to support people when they may be in a place of difficulty, but you help people to ignite their inner coach, so that they aren't always getting to a point of struggle. It's an education process as much as it is a support process, an achievement process, however you may describe it. that inner coach that you have, where you teach yourself that you have the resources within you to conquer and work your way through difficulty. You have the ability to choose how you experience and see the world. You have the ability to change the relationship that you have with your emotions and make different choices. None of that is necessarily easy, and not all clients are necessarily ready for that part of the journey of coaching, but it's all possible. And I think a side effect of coaching is being able to help people grow their internal resources.
I think in an organizational context, when we think about the role of coaching in mental health, we see lots of organizations now investing in coaching at a large scale, particularly global organizations, but also charities and smaller organizations. Where I see the resistance in organizations doing that is the decision point is around, what do we believe as an organization is our role in supporting our employees' mental health? And often in complex situations like that, as human beings, we like to make it simple as possible. So either we have a role and it's our responsibility, or it's not. And of course, it's not as simple as that. And so organizations have to have the conversations around, do we welcome the whole person in the workplace? What do we see as our relationship with our employees? And we have a lot of organizations now also becoming employee-owned organizations or part employee-owned, and that's changing the dynamic as well. So I think that's an important conversation to have. And when we think about the role of mental health, the role of coaching in mental health, when we coach an individual, we're creating, or that individual is creating, a ripple effect. So as they learn how to identify what their needs are, how to articulate what their needs are, and they go back into those relationships that are important to them, and they start being able to articulate it, in many cases they will find then that those other individuals that they interact with will welcome those changes, and they will then get their needs met, which will improve their mental health. Or sometimes it might mean that the relationships that they're involved in that perhaps are a bit toxic, they actually start to put boundaries in place, and maybe they even choose to leave those relationships, and that has a positive impact on their mental health. So even in the one-to-one coaching, it has a role. And then we know that how we experience teams has a huge impact on our mental health. And when we look at team coaching, that can play a really positive role in, again, creating those safe spaces, talking about conflict. How do we do that in our team? And we talked about that in a previous episode as well. And what we found before when we've been training people is that when you ask people, what do you need? So many people find that the hardest question to answer. So creating that space where people can really engage with that can be super powerful.
Yeah, and we see that time and time again, don't we? Both in organizations and in personal coaching. And I think what we're really saying is coaching, the role that it plays in mental health is a proactive approach. So what we know from working with people, when you don't have clarity, when you don't know what your needs are, when you don't know what's important to you, that road can often lead you to the other end of the continuum, where you start to feel lost, or you burn out, or you just feel that you don't know who you are anymore. And obviously low mood can creep in. So there is a route to the other end of the mental health continuum. And coaching, I believe, just puts almost like a reroute, perhaps, of hey, come on, let's go and learn some things about yourself. Let's go and explore what's important to you. Let's reinvigorate your motivation, your engagement, your aspirations, your achievement. And of course, there are those people who come to coaching knowing exactly what they want. And that's why they're in coaching. They're there to get support for achieving their goals. But there's a huge proportion of people that come to coaching knowing that something just isn't quite right, but want to go on that journey of discovery and set some goals and raise their aspirations and aim for something new and invigorating. And so coaching for me is like an interject on that continuum to help people before they get to a place where they don't know where to turn. And then you go into a system which is heavy at the moment. I think waiting lists for any kind of support is incredibly long. And when you're in a place of struggle, you don't want to be waiting 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 weeks to get the support that you need. And coaching at that point isn't necessarily appropriate anymore, because your system is flooded with all sorts of things that are going on. So getting coaching when you're on that journey of self-discovery and wanting to work out what the future might hold for you, or how you can feel more contented or more belonging, or how to regain motivation at a point in time where you are able to access those thoughts and emotions in a safe way. And I think that is a real sweet spot of where coaching can come in and support people with their mental health.
Yeah, I think having somebody else to talk things over with can take some of the fear away. And I was talking to somebody earlier today in supervision. We were talking about how, having a goal and being able to bring a goal into a coaching conversation is really just a pass to get into coaching, because we'll end up going deeper and discovering, helping them to discover things about themselves. And really what we're talking about is building resilience. So having that knowledge of self can give you that. And, from a personal perspective, I think I've talked about this in the past, but, a driver for me to come into the world of coaching was that fear that I had or would have mental health issues, because my nan struggled with that. And when I think about the role of coaching and mental health, think about it from the coach's perspective. We know that lots of people that are attracted to work in the helping professions are mission led, have had a personal experience that creates that motivation for them to help other people. And lots of people in the workplace who are learning coaching skills, and we've had lots of people come on our coaching programs more than ever that are managers, and they don't want to leave their organizations and become freelance coaches, but they're like, I've got a team and I really want to be the best leader or manager that I can possibly be, and therefore I want to develop and grow my skills in these areas. Because a lot of managers don't have conversations because I don't know if it's okay to ask this question. I don't want to probe too much is something that we hear all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think developing coaching skills helps to give you the confidence around how you contract with the other person around what's okay to ask and discuss and discover in those conversations, and also when you would refer on because it's not within your zone of competence, or you explore what other support is available to the individual. And I think it's important to acknowledge that coaching isn't useful for everybody at every moment in time, but it can have an important role to play in helping to develop your everyday mental health, because as you have coaching, you actually learn to train your own inner coach. And
and I think we talk about courage and compassion, don't we, in that leadership space? And I think that's what coaching training helps you to do, is to have the courage to hold conversations that perhaps not everyday leaders hold, but that can be incredibly powerful for your colleagues, your peers, your teammates, and for every place where coaching is appropriate to support on that mental health continuum. There are places where coaching isn't appropriate to support on that mental health continuum, and where you have clients that may be turning up to sessions and they are clearly in struggle, and their life, their life is complex. There's things that are falling down in multiple places of life, and the emotions, they are permanently sort of flooded by their emotions and unable to think clearly and think straight. As much as the coach who comes in and is mission-led and wants to help, you have to recognize where coaching isn't the right thing, and where you would need, as Jo, you said there about referring on. And it doesn't mean that coaching can't sit alongside therapy, but the timing has to be right in the journey of where that client is in their place of growth and healing, with their mental health, and educate those clients on what coaching is so they can make choices around the support that they engage with. Because sometimes clients don't know, do they? They don't know what they need, and they don't know what different interventions can offer. And as coaches, I think we have a role to be clear around, look, this is what coaching is, and this is what coaching isn't. And I think you can make recommendations to your clients. So even where there may be clients say, nope, I think this is great for coaching. It's okay if as the coach you disagree. You say, actually, why don't you chat to your therapist about that? Or maybe go and see your GP, have a conversation. You can also hold boundaries around where you see that line based on what you know of your competence and what you know of your practice.
And I think as you're listening to the podcast, perhaps it's also about engaging with what is the role that you want coaching to play in mental health if you're listening as a coach, and how do you want to contribute towards that? And I think it is around having the courage to open up conversations, asking people how do you feel about that? It's so often missed out, isn't it? Both in workplaces, but also in social conversations, when you really listen, and how surface level a lot of conversations are. And maybe that's because that's what people can cope with at that particular point in time. But, it's that, how are you? And then how are you really? Or how are you, and then how are you feeling at the moment, or how do you feel about that, and being okay and ready to hear the answer.
Absolutely, because that, I think, is harder than asking the question. Being ready to hear that somebody is struggling, or being ready to hear that somebody is sad, or and without judging what those emotions may be for that person, but being able to hold space and hear that out. And I think as coaches, this is where I think many people feel the fear as a coach, or fear they might get something wrong or do harm, because clients will disclose things in coaching sessions. And we had somebody actually ask in the business in our coaching crowd lounge recently around, what do you do if a client shares something big that has happened in their life with you as part of the course of coaching? And these things do happen, because if you're talking about moving forward and achieving goals, and you come across obstacles in the way of that person being able to do that with ease, it's often because something has happened that has changed perhaps the way that they think and experience trust or safety or whatever it might be. And when clients share these things as coaches, you think, oh my gosh, like that sounds like trauma. I'm not sure if I should be equipped to deal with that. Does this client need therapy instead of coaching? All those questions can come into your mind, especially if you're a new coach and haven't had a lot of experience. And I think this is where, as coaches, we need to trust in the resourcefulness of our clients and ask them some questions. Like, have the courage to ask them questions. Where are you with this particular event? What's the impact that it's having on you today? How do you feel about that event when you think about it now? Is this something that you feel you can bring into coaching and that be safe for you? Have you spent any time in therapy being able to process this? Does anybody else know about this? Lots and lots of questions, because you don't want to be the only person who is supporting your client with this particular revelation if it is new to them. If it's part of their story and part of their life, chances are they're sharing it with you as information so you can see the full context of the picture. It doesn't mean that they are experiencing the trauma of that event and are asking you to help them with it. And as coaches, this is where your courage comes in, and your compassion, to be able to really understand your client's experience through their eyes and make choices together about how you may proceed with that in a coaching space.
So often the coachee will say, I've never told anybody else this, but, and then they choose to share something with you that they've been holding and maybe experiencing as carrying as a heavy load for a long time. And actually, when they reach that point, maybe in the coaching relationship, where they want to be able to put that down, and we think about the role that can have for them in mental health, and as they feel resourced to be able to make new choices in their life about their relationship to different things and what they want to be able to do with it. It's a huge privilege that we have to be in relationship with others in such an intimate and trusted environment. And I think we don't take that lightly. We give it the respect that it needs. And when we work with organizations, we help them around, how do you introduce a coaching culture what would that look like? What resistance might there be to that? How will you engage in early conversations about these things? What are your values as an organization? What are the behaviors that, you know, that demonstrate those values? And are there places for people to talk about how they feel? And you and I are really passionate about working with emotions in coaching, because actually there's lots of coaches who don't talk about emotions or explore emotions with their coachees, and they enjoy working at more of a transactional level with their coachees, and that can have a great impact. There's also a space for coaches to work at greater depth with coachees if the coachee wants to engage in that work and is able to move forward on what they want to work on.
Yeah. And of course, as we talk about all of this stuff, remember that emotions are also curiosity, inspiration, joy, excitement, pride, achievement, love, connection. It's all of those things as well. It's not just the sadness, guilt, struggle. You know, the predominant space in coaching is for the former, you know, the joy, the positivity. Because even when you work through things that feel heavier, it's because you're moving into the light and forwards in your growth. And it's just a part of the journey. Coaching isn't all about the struggle end of the mental health. It's absolutely about finding purpose, joy, passion, you know, excitement. It's about that. And so in a coaching journey, these conversations that we're sort of sharing snippets of today around the other end of the continuum, it's just part of a very broad conversation. And I think that's the thing to remember when you talk about coaching and the role that it has in mental health, is we are all of that continuum at any point in time. Like, no one is immune from having mental health difficulties. It's just how do we resource ourselves either to, you know, as you said, like the insurance policy to protect ourselves from struggle, or how can we be proactive in our life to go after the things that we want, so that we proactively make choices and manage our lives. So
celebration,
celebration, curiosity, engagement.
I think so many times coachees will begin a coaching session by offloading what's been happening and having that confidential, objective space where they know the other person isn't going to be, they're not going to impact the other person, if you like, by offloading it, that they can hold that. And even then you say, you know, what else would you like to share about that? And the coachee might say, just that I feel so much better having just shared that with you. And what have you noticed as you've been sharing that with me? Actually, I'm noticing a shift in myself. I'm noticing that I'm shifting from being totally overwhelmed to I can already start to see some solutions. And they realize they have the resources in themselves. And actually, you sat there as a coach and you've given them permission to be able to share it. And what we're doing is they are doing is acknowledging their reality. Their reality and experience is being recognized by us as the coach. And with that, it gives them a platform to be able to say, okay, what do I want to do with that? Do I feel better now and I can move on to work on what I wanted to? Thanks, that was great. Or are they like, actually, could we talk a bit more about this bit? Because I'm noticing that every time I'm checking in, there is a bit of it that's to do with this thing. And I'd really like to understand more about that. Can we do that? And then as a coach, you can say, yes, let's do that. And then you can begin that work together. So there are lots of different roles that coaching has to play within mental health. We've talked about some of them today, including that celebration and recognition. If you're thinking, I want to learn more about coaching, there's a few different ways that you can engage with us beyond the podcast. You could take our quiz, which is mycoachingcourse.com, and that will help you to work out what level of coaching course might be a good fit for you. You might want to read our book, Deciding to Coach, which is all about the coaching mindset and business strategy, and that's available on Amazon. Or you might want to come and join us in our coaching crowd group over on Facebook.